Agenda. For the seminar today, we will have a chance to listen to our colleagues from the IP Office of Singapore about the role of IP Office of Singapore in supporting SMEs in using IP for their business growth, as well as about the network programs available to assist the business in the protection of their IP rights. Also, right at the seminar today, we will have the opportunity to interact directly with the business with our two speakers from Crypto Technologies on the topic of IP commercialization. We will then close our seminar with a dialogue with the business session, where all of your questions will be addressed by our distinguished speakers. We're very honored to have with us today Ms. Justina Lassis, the Head of Economic and Trade from the EU delegation to Singapore. Before we start our meeting today, I would like to kindly invite Ms. Justina Lassis to deliver the opening remarks. Thank you very much for joining us today, Ms. Lassis, and the floor is yours now.
Thank you very much for having me. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to open today's seminar on IP services and tools to businesses. I would like to thank the Intellectual Property Office of Singapore, IPOS, and Arise Plus IPR project for making this event possible. I also would like to thank all our distinguished speakers for agreeing to be part of today's seminar and the audience for joining. Intellectual property is a key driver for economic growth as it helps companies to capitalize on their intangible assets. Intangible assets such as brand presence and designs are increasingly important in today's knowledge-based economy. IP-intensive industries play an essential role in EU economy, as they currently account for almost 45% of Europe's GDP and directly contribute to the creation of almost 30% of all jobs. Protecting IP rights means protecting innovation and ideas and the commercial value of the business. Therefore, it is increasingly vital to ensure SMEs are aware of the benefits of integrating IP in their business strategy, aware of the necessary procedures, processes, tools, and avenues to secure the protection of their intangible assets. IP Office plays an important role in providing SMEs with information and advice to boost the uptake of IP by SMEs and to improve the enforcement of IP rights. SMEs should know that intellectual property is their business right and that registration of IP rights across ASEAN is becoming increasingly more accessible and convenient. The protection of IP rights is also strongly embedded in the comprehensive EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, which is in force since November 2019. The FTA complements the rights and obligations of Singapore and the EU under the WTO Agreement on Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights, or TRIPS in short, and other international treaties in the field of intellectual property. It also includes far-reaching provisions on copyrights, patents, trademarks, design, geographical indication, and protection of undisclosed information and plant variety rights. I highly appreciate the efforts and proactivity of the IPOS in providing different platforms for regular dialogue with both local and foreign businesses who are doing or plan to do business in Singapore. Today's seminar is an example of such a platform, aiming at highlighting to the business the importance of protecting their intangible assets and highlighting the tools available to do that. The seminar will also serve as a chance for the IP Office to listen to the business's concerns and in order to improve the national IP infrastructure and to address any inquiries and difficulties the businesses may have encountered while trying to protect their IP rights. I am pleased to see the large attendees of both local and EU-based businesses at today's seminar. I encourage you to take this opportunity and to interact as much as possible with our IP experts. I trust you will find today's seminar informative and beneficial. I hope that it will provide you with the necessary tools to expand your activities in Singapore in the near future. Thank you very much and enjoy the seminar.
Thank you very much, Ms. Justina Lassis, for your kind opening remarks. Next, we would like to invite Mr. Walter Chia, Deputy Director of Partnership and Program Department from the IP Office of Singapore, to deliver the welcome remark and to officiate the seminar today. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Waterchi. The floor is yours now.
Thank you, Yong. So my name is Walter from the Intellectual Property Office of Singapore, and I'd like to thank the European Union as well as the Arise Plus program for creating this platform and opportunity for us to engage with businesses from both Asia and Europe. Without further ado, let me just sort of share with you some of my thoughts as part of our opening remarks. I think one of the first things that we need to establish first is that SMEs are critical for Singapore's growth, and I would dare say also critical for the growth of many economies in Southeast Asia. So just looking at Singapore's economic makeup per se, you'll find that in terms of the number of enterprises in Singapore, there are over 280,000 registered enterprises, of which 99% of them are SMEs. Only 1% of these are non-SMEs. And among the SMEs ownership, 81% of them are locally owned, 19% are foreign owned. And more importantly, in terms of job opportunities, the 70% of Singapore's jobs are created by SMEs themselves. So in short, I would just like to say that SMEs are crucial for Singapore and its future economic growth. And it is often, I guess the government is often accused of, or even often accused of neglecting this pool, but I must correct this perception. And I think we're here to listen to what SMEs need and what we can do to sort of change our services so that we can better meet those needs. Another point, I think just to build on Ms. Lasik's point about the importance of intangible assets, I think there's what many people are not aware of is that there's been a fundamental and very important shift in intangible assets in the last 25 years or so. So if you look at the component of a typical S&P 500 listed company in 1975, if you look at their books, you realize that about 17% of the book value is based from intangible assets. 83% of it are based on physical assets like your factory, your plant, your inventory, your equipment, machinery, these sort of things. Fast forward to 2020, you find that there's been a drastic reversal. Today's S&P 500 companies, 90% of their book value actually comes from intangible assets. Only 10% of these are your typical factory, plant, and machinery assets in listed book value. So the significance of this fact is that if you are a company and you wish to grow today, you need to invest in and develop your intangible assets, of which intellectual property is a significant proportion of intangible assets. I don't think I need to go into much details as to what intellectual property is. Traditionally, intellectual property consists of two types. One, the registrable type, your patents, trademarks, and in some countries, copyrights. But in other countries, trade secrets and copyrights and designs are to different degrees registered and not non-registrable. Geographical indicators are registrable in Singapore and the European Union. So these are all the different types of registrable intellectual property. But there are other things that are part of intangible assets that are not registrable IP. One, for example, your data. So in the course of your company's operations, you accumulate data, whether it's customer data or know-how in production or know-how in, say, getting regulatory approvals for your products and services. These are all intangible knowledge that are critical for your business and yet often underappreciated. So I'll just leave this teaser here at this moment, and then I'll elaborate a little bit more about this if necessary during the Q&A. But maybe just allow me sort of 1 minute to play a video presentation on what intangible assets can do for you today in a post-pandemic world. Thank you. With this, I'll pass the floor back to Ms. Yongbei.
Yes, Thank you very much, Mr. Watercheer, for your kind welcoming remark. And we also would like to congratulate on the success of IP Week this year, which has successfully highlighted the importance of IP in supporting enterprise growth. And thank you, and we will see you again later during our seminar today. Dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the event today is organized by Arise Plus IPR in kind coordination with the IP Office of Singapore. For a better understanding about the Arise Plus IPR and its support to the business, we would like to invite Ms. Carolina P. Touch, the Deputy Project Leader from Arise Plus IPR, to share with us some information about Arise Plus IPR.
Thank you. On behalf of the Arise Plus IPR project management team, I would like to thank all the colleagues from the Intellectual Property Office of Singapore for your contribution to this IP seminar, which falls under one of the events of the IP Week conducted very recently. I would like to very briefly, I will be very brief, and so we can start with an interesting presentation from our colleagues from IPOS. Within the next slides, I would like to share with you some information about the Arise Plus IPR project and the support that we take care for the businesses. This project actually supports the ASEAN regional integration through the intellectual property cooperation and aims to upgrade the IP systems for the creation, protection, utilization, administration, and enforcement in line with the international best practices and standards and the strategic objectives of the ASEAN Intellectual Property Rights Action Plan. The Arise Plus IPR project covers trademarks, industrial designs, geographical indications, and intellectual property rights enforcement. Our main beneficiaries are the ASEAN IP offices, enforcement agencies, businesses, amongst the SMEs, practitioners, legal advisors, and attorneys, and also the GI Association and GI producers. Through its various activities, Arise Plus IPR has constantly provided support to the businesses community in the ASEAN region. These are reflected through various seminars, workshops, as well as technical assistance provided directly to local business and producers. Since the start of the project in January 2018, we counted with more than 2,300 participants in all our activities. In addition, Arise Plus IPR, in coordination with certain ASEAN IP offices, have conducted different awareness campaigns to raise awareness on IP in the ASEAN region, either in the form of IP fairs or via public awareness campaigns on relevant social media channels. Successful stories of ASEAN businesses in exploiting the benefits of integrating IP in their business strategy have also shared through various media channels with the businesses community in the region. Arise Plus IPR has also coordinated with the ASEAN IP offices to develop and maintain different IP tools and databases, offering free of charge online access to detailed information of the registrations of trademarks, industrial designs, geographical indications, as well as IP case law in the ASEAN countries. All these IP tools and databases are managed by ASEAN IP offices and regularly updated. I invite you, all of you, to check the different online tools shown here in the screen for the different purposes. Finally, I would like to share some of the publications that the Arise Plus IPR has made for businesses. The project has joined hands with the ASEAN IP offices to develop and produce IP materials and publications for numerous purposes. These publications are used for a variety of goals, such as improving business marketing strategies, for business education, and for business to reach the international and regional markets. All materials can be found and can be downloaded from the Arise Plus IPR website. That will conclude my brief presentation. For any updates on our activities, public awareness campaigns, and general Arise Plus IPR updates, please do follow us in the above channels. And in any case that you have any questions, I'm happy to address it during this event today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carolina. Dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, As highlighted in the welcome remark of Ms. Lassis from the EU delegation, IP Office play a very vital role in raising awareness of SMEs about the importance of IP protection and enforcement, and to assist and facilitate SMEs in their IP registration. With the next presentation, we will have a chance to learn more about the roles of IP Office of Singapore in helping business owners use IP for growth. May I welcome back Mr. Watercheer to share with us more about this topic. Mr. Watercheer is currently the Deputy Director of the Partnership and Program Department of the Intellectual Property Office of Singapore, IPOS. Mr. Water helps manage IPOS relations with its customers, domestic industry groups, members of the innovation ecosystem, and the creators active community. Mr. Watercheer is also the Quality Service Managers for IPOS. Mr. Watercheer's teams engage with various domestic groups to promote a greater use of IP to help drive growth either directly via the partnership with various trade associations and industry groups or through flagship events like the annual IP Weeks at Singapore and the World IP Day. Mr. Watercheer was also part of the team that established Singapore as an international search authority under the Patent Cooperation Treaty in 2014, and a member of the campaign team for Singapore's successful bid for the WIPO DG in 2020. Mr. Watercheer, the floor is yours now.
Thank you. Thank you. I just realized that my hair was a lot more black than it is today. Anyway, jokes aside, I thought I just realized that I wasn't able to share my slides while I was speaking during my opening remarks. So these are just some of the slides that I was wanting to show you everyone today. So this is just what you had missed out. But without further ado, let me just go into the crux of my presentation today. I think first of all, I think for those of you from Singapore, or those of you familiar with Singapore, will realize that the Singapore government seldom does things at the whim. So we have just recently launched a 10-year plan called the Singapore IP Strategy 2030. That is basically an effort by the entire government of Singapore to sort of build Singapore into an IP hub, a global IP hub for intangible assets and IP activities and transactions, as well as to ensure that we continue to be one of the top ranked IP offices, IP regimes in the world. I use the word regime because the IP ecosystem in a country is not just the effort of the IP office. It is the effort of many other agencies, together the businesses working as one in order to produce an environment, which is why I use this broader phrase called regime. Under this, I won't elaborate too much on the Singapore IP strategy per se, but I'll go into some of the work that is being done as part of this IP strategy that IPOS is undertaking, IPOS and its partners are undertaking. So one of the first things that we're doing is we continue to push for better digitalization. I think digitalization is something that's often a phrase that's often thrown about, but often unappreciated. And one of the key things we realized is that with COVID-19 and everyone's working from home, with companies increasingly collaborating without in-person engagements, it is all the more important that we build the right digital platforms so that we can deliver our services not just efficiently but also effectively. So you'll find the last 2 years, IPOS actually has embarked on a couple of well, I would say they were controversial at that time, but I think they are quite game-changing today. One, we now have a mobile app that enables you to file a trademark filing. It enables you to search for registered marks as well as to renew your trademarks that have already been registered with IPOS as well. So this is what I believe we're one of the first IP offices in the world to have a mobile app to do this. Last year, we actually added some basic portfolio management functionalities, including the ability for you to take a look at what patents you have registered in your company's name, as well as to renew them based on the app itself. This year, we've launched a new brand search function where that enables businesses to quickly search for logos, trademarks, or names so that they can easily decide whether or not something they have in mind is actually novel, and that they can seek protection from, if it's novel, they can seek protection from the app right away. We are now in the midst, in fact, we're in the last stages of building a new IP registration portal that will replace our IP2SG that was first launched in 2014. So stay tuned. IP4SG promises to be faster, more intuitive for all users concerned. So let's keep our fingers crossed, and we'll announce IP4SG when it is ready. The other aspect of what the IP office does for businesses in general is to continuously review its laws just to make sure they are relevant for the business needs today. One of which is that we continue to make sure that we are part of the international system. So we sign on to 15 WIPO treaties. We are signatories to almost all the treaties that enable the easier transition of IP from one country to another. So despite IP being territorial, these treaties make it easier, faster, and cheaper for companies to take the IP from one jurisdiction to another. Internally, within the country, domestically, we are looking at a couple of things. We continue to have policy reviews. So we have experts from all aspects, including academia, businesses, as well as the policymakers, to sit down together to take a look at the impact of what artificial intelligence can have for IP. As some of you may be following the news, you have this example of a chimpanzee taking a photo of himself, and the question is whether the chimp owns the IP or not. That is subject to intense debate all over the world. So it is important that IP officers in Singapore have a view or at least an opinion on such matters so that it is ready and able to address business concerns should this arise. The other policy review that we undertook recently was a trade secrets policy review. As you know, trade secrets are often an alternative to patents, and many companies have decided to protect their technology via trade secrets or confidential information. And the question is what laws are required to make sure that trade secrets continue to be relevant in modern times, especially in a day and age where innovation is done across borders. In an MSc context, you may have one research unit in Tokyo doing a certain piece of the research for a certain technology, and another office in Madrid that completes the invention itself, and maybe a Japanese office that packages the entire invention into something that's ready for the consumer market. So this kind of cross-border innovation and processes that accompany such innovation are important for IP officers to understand, as well as to make sure that there are relevant laws that cover these needs. So one of the things that we will be announcing shortly in November is the review to our Copyright Act. The Act revisions are quite substantial. I won't go into all of them, but suffice to say, it's just part of our measures to make sure that we remain relevant to the times. The other thing that we will continue to do as an IP office for businesses is that we want to make sure that whatever is registered in IPOS remains a quality registration. So we'll subject our patent applications, trademark applications to higher quality requirements, so that these patents and trademarks are more easily transferred to other jurisdictions. So if you benchmark us, I think I would dare say with some degree of humbleness, we did model our patent system to that of the EU. So we worked very closely with EPO in the development of our IP system back in 2013, 2014. And we benchmark against EPO because we want to be among the best IP offices in the world, so that a Singapore business with a registered Singapore patent will find it easier to bring it into EU. If our standards are low, while it may become cheaper and faster, the problem is that then the interoperability element of this registered patent will be reduced significantly, as the business that wants to take a Singapore patent, a low quality Singapore patent, into a higher quality regime will need to do a lot of top-up work. So this is one reason why we decided to adopt quality as one of our main ethoses. So yeah, we continue to make sure that we keep our laws relevant to the times. We also are working on things like improving enforceability. So aside from the typical litigation avenues, we are also promoting quite strongly alternate dispute resolution mechanisms. These mechanisms, by and large, in general, are typically faster and cheaper. And I think we are happy to say that we are working very closely with the WIPO Arbitration and Mediation Center on two services, mediation expert determination. And these two services will offer businesses an alternative to litigation in resolving the IP disputes. And I think the other thing that's, I won't say unique to Singapore, but I think it's critical in a small economy like Singapore's, is that the IP office of Singapore has to work with other agencies in order to make sure that it delivers the right services for businesses. And one of the things that we do all the time is to work with bodies like the National Research Foundation or A-STAR, our agency for science and technology research, to sort of benchmark and sort of understand the needs of innovators and inventors on that side, and to help them make it easier to commercialize government-funded research into commercial applications. So these are things that we do, and I think we also work with other agencies that work, SkillsFuture Singapore, Workforce Singapore, to ensure that we develop the right manpower to support the IP needs of the growing economy. Some of the things we're doing now today that have yet fully come to fully come to fruition is that we're working with the International Valuation Standards Council and Singapore Accountancy Commission to enhance the recognition of intangible assets better in a company's book value. We are also working with the Stock Exchange Singapore on similar mechanisms so that there's at least some kind of standardization in reporting of intangible assets, so that companies are better able to value the intangible assets and once correctly valued, appreciate and manage them. Of course, IP officers cannot run from promoting awareness. In the course of my work in 8 years in IPOS, I've come across a wide variety of companies that have already got very sophisticated understanding of IP, and they come to us demanding for certain quality services, as well as I deal with also SME businesses that come to us on a daily basis and confuse what is a trademark, what is a patent, and what is copyright. And so the needs are very varied, and the spectrum of knowledge that I need to provide covers both from the very basic all the way to the very advanced. So we do that through a number of schemes. One, we're trying to build future leaders in innovation. We're working with the tertiary institutions on a program to train youths to appreciate IP better. We also have an initiative called Growing Resilience Through Intangibles, which was launched during COVID-19. This program actually helps to help companies use their intangible assets better to survive the pandemic crisis. I will elaborate on that later. As I said, we are in partnership with SGX on an intangible disclosure and valuation mechanism. And also we are continuously engaging with trade associations, chambers, as well as key partners like Rise Plus themselves. So over at IPOS, we run weekly IP legal and business clinics where any SME can come to us with a IP legal or IP business type of question. And these clinics are free. They are 45-minute sessions are designed for you to get an overall understanding of your IP problems so that you can seek further professional assistance later on. We organize an annual flagship IP event called IP at SG that basically brings together the IP ecosystem in one event. We did so in a hybrid format this year. We hope to return to a fully physical event or fully hybrid event next year with larger numbers. We also run our annual World IP Day celebrations. I won't belabor on this, but I also want to make sure that people are aware that we have a program that we're working with SBF for the Workforce for IP Savvy Enterprises. It basically provides funding for businesses who wish to acquire more knowledge and attend courses in IP. So just an example on GRID, I think GRID is unique in the sense that this is one of our first initiatives under the SIPS 2030 where we did not just work as IPOS, but we worked with various government agencies to push this program out. And I think what we do is we offer advice not just on the traditional services as IP office, where we accept IP filings and renewals, where we entertain customer service inquiries, where we run the clinics, where we conduct hearings and mediation sessions, where we work with other partners to provide training programs, and we run the flagship events. But we went into other areas. We actually launched the WISE program then. We are working on the IDEAS program right now. We tweaked the IPOS Go app, and we introduced a new program called SG IP Fast, which my colleague Julie will elaborate on a bit later. We also enhanced our mediation promotion program, where basically we provided a higher amount of subsidies for companies who are seeking to use mediation to resolve the IP disputes. So these are all the things that we're doing beyond GRID that actually helps our stakeholders resolve the IP issues better. We've also, in the course of the last 3 or 4 years, structured ourselves with greater flexibility. One of the key things that we've done was to create a wholly owned subsidiary called IPOS International Private Limited. IPOS International is actually a subsidiary company that delivers bespoke IP consultancy services for businesses themselves. And they have so far assisted 800 companies since its formation in 2015. So this is IPOS. I think through IPOS International, they are able to deliver better tailored programs that go beyond just general IP knowledge. In fact, they're running a whole series of training courses on IP management now, one of which is the Applying for IP Fundamentals in Business program. So this program actually has up to 90% SkillsFuture funding. So the cost to SMEs is actually very low for its staff, for their staff to attend such a program. They also run a 6-week Discover Intangible Assets program, which basically they will go down to your company, understand what intangible assets you have, and then give you a top-level advice on what you can do as a company to better tap on and commercialize exploit your intangible assets better. They also provide other bespoke services for companies that are about to enter into mergers and acquisition activities, that are thinking of expanding overseas, that are about to enter into joint ventures with other companies. So these are just some of the services available by IPOS International. Please visit their website, www.iposinternational.com, for more details, including the business guides and articles. So I will not go too much into our IPOS work with innovation agencies, but I'd like to touch on a little bit because I have not done so earlier in our enforcement work. The nature of the way IPOS is structured and created is such that we do not have enforcement power. So the IP office, because we register your IP, in order to prevent a conflict of interest, we do not enforce this IP after registration. So this is done by the two agencies primarily, the Singapore Police Force and Singapore Customs. But we work very closely with these two outfits almost on a daily, weekly basis to help companies combat IPR infringements. We also work with the Infocomm Media Development Authority that basically regulates data protection in Singapore because we are on a continual drive to make sure that companies appreciate their data better and treat their data as an intangible asset. And as I mentioned, we have been quite a key proponent of dispute resolution, and we do so primarily through 4 vehicles actually. The WIPO Arbitration and Mediation Center, which has a branch office in Singapore. We also have such services offered by the Singapore International Arbitration Center, the Singapore International Mediation Center, and the Singapore Mediation Center. For more details, please approach these agencies directly, but I'm also happy to entertain questions on this as it comes along. So with that, I'd like to end my presentation and pass the floor back to our moderator, Ms. Yong Lei.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Waterchair, for your presentation. I think it's very interesting to see the continuous development in IP legislations and policy, as well as the IPOS strong engagement with the stakeholders to adapt and continuously improve your service to meet the business need. So in case you have any questions for Mr. Waterchair, you can send us your questions in the Q&A tab, and your questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end of the seminar today. So thank you, Mr. Waterchair. So next, I would like to invite our next speakers, Mr. Lord Chiu Lee, managers from the Registries of Patent, Designs and Plant Variety from the IP Office of Singapore, to share with us about the network and program to accelerate the IP registration. Ms. Lord Chiu Lee is a manager of the Registries of Patents, Designs and Plant Variety Protection at the IP Office of Singapore. As the head of operation and quality, she oversees operational performance, quality management, and process practices. She is the management representative of the ISO 9001 quality management system for the Registries of Patents. Mr. Lord Chiu Lee also worked closely on the policy and legislative matters related to designs and plant variety protection. She holds a Master of Engineering from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. Ms. Lord Chiu Lee, the floor is yours now.
Thank you. So good afternoon, good morning to all. So thank you for taking your time to attend this seminar on IP services and tools to businesses. So for this segment, I will be sharing about how you can leverage on IPOS networks and programs to accelerate your IP registration in Singapore. So this is an overview of the topics which I'll be covering today. So I'll be giving a quick overview of our IP regime, including some filing statistics, followed by the key segment, which is our acceleration networks and programs that are available in Singapore. And lastly, I will show you some examples on how you can leverage on these networks to accelerate your IP registration and therefore bring your products and services faster to investors and global markets. So IP actually refers to creations of mind, for example, inventions, books of arts, computer programs, and logos. IP is actually a subset of intangible assets, which are assets that are non-physical in nature, as opposed to physical assets such as machinery. So here is a quick overview of the intangible assets. So the type of IPs that are registrable in Singapore includes trademarks, patents, designs, geographical indications, and plant variety rights. So on the other hand, there are also non-registrable intellectual property or intangible assets such as trade secrets, copyrights, know-how, data, software codes, and these are automatically protected once they are created. So these slides shows the 10-year filing trends for major IPs, namely the patents, trademarks, and designs. So the patents and trademarks filings are generally on an increasing trend, while designs filings have largely hovered around the same range in this 10-year period. So in 2020, we've actually received about 13,000 patent applications, 53,000 trademark classes, and 1,200 design applications. So on the demographics of our top IP applicants, they are generally similar across these three IPs and originates largely from US, Japan, Singapore, China, and Germany. So in the next section, I'll be touching on the main topic of my presentation, that is IPOS networks and programs, which could be used to accelerate your IP registration in Singapore. So this is an overview of the international, regional, and domestic acceleration programs in Singapore. So internationally, Singapore is a participating office of the Global Patent Prosecution Highway, in short called PPH program, which has over 27 participating offices. And regionally, IP registration can be accelerated via the ASEAN Patent Examination Corporation, called ASPEC, and our registration cooperation between Singapore with Cambodia and Laos. For international applications filed via the Patent Cooperation Treaty, we are also capable of conducting international searches and preliminary examination for applicants from 11 countries. And lastly, we have a domestic acceleration program named SGIP Fast Track, which can be used to accelerate the grant of patents and its related trademark and designs applications. So the Patent Prosecution Highway, PPH, is a work sharing program between IP officers where the examination process of a patent application in one IP office can be accelerated by referencing the examination results from another IP office. So IPOS has PPH pilot programs with BPO and IP offices of Brazil, China, and Mexico. So we are also a participating office of the Global PPH pilot program, which has over 27 participating offices. So under the GPPH pilot, a request for accelerated examination of an IPOS patent application can be made by relying on the patent search and examination results or international search and examination results under the PCT established by any of the other GPPH participating offices. So the average turnaround time for first office action by IPOS for PPH request is about 5 months compared to our 12-month service commitment for normal applications. So you may actually use a Singapore report to accelerate the examination process in other PPH participating offices. So there are actually 3 types of PPH programs available, namely the traditional, multi-9, and PCT-PPH. For traditional PPH, only the Office of Second Filing can utilize the results from the Office of First Filing. Under the multi-9 PPH program, the Office of Later Examination can utilize the results from the Office of Early Examination, regardless whether it is the Office of First or Second Filing. So multi-9 is actually a Japanese word, meaning to feel sorry that something is usable, is wasted, or something valuable is not properly used. So since the traditional PPH requires Office of First Filing's examination results, therefore, examination results coming out from the Office of Second Filing earlier than the Office of First Filing would be wasted, and therefore it is felt multi-9 to both applicants and IP officers. And lastly, the PCT-PPH program allows applicants to request PPH based on PCT international work products. So you may use a PCT report to accelerate at national officers who are part of this program. So in summary, the PPH program utilizes the examination results from an IP office to accelerate the examination process in another participating office. Okay, so the ASEAN Patent Examination Cooperation aspect expedites the patent application process by sharing research and examination results between 9 participating offices in Southeast Asia, including Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. So through this program, applicants in ASEAN can actually obtain patents faster and more efficiently if they seek protection in more than one participating ASEAN member state. And this actually helps to reduce duplication on the search and examination work in the second IP Office of Application. There are also 2 pilot programs under ASPEC. So firstly, we have the ASPEC AIM, which prioritizes Industry 4.0 applications, and it has a commitment for first office actions to be issued within 6 months. Secondly, so PCT ASPEC, which allows the reliance of PCT reports issued from an ASEAN International Searching Authority for ASPEC. So this year, there's also the introduction of written opinion as an acceptable work product under the ASPEC program. So in summary, ASPEC aims to expedite the application process from examination to the grant of the patent. So you may use a Singapore report to accelerate the patent process in other ASPEC participating offices. IPOS has also established cooperation with Cambodia and Laos to support companies seeking to re-register their granted Singapore patents in these 2 countries. So this is a substantial benefit to owners of Singapore patents, as they will be able to apportion the prosecution costs in Singapore over Cambodia and Laos, while also enjoying time savings. So for patents, applicants are able to re-register their Singapore granted patents in Cambodia and Laos, or rely on the examination report issued by IPOS for the grant of the corresponding application in these 2 countries. So for the arrangement between Singapore and Cambodia, this recognition is also extended to designs. IPOS has been appointed as ASEAN's first Patent International Searching and Preliminary Examining Authority, ISA IPEA, since 2015. So national and residents of the 11 other countries, as shown in the slide below, can choose Singapore as ISA to conduct search for the international application. So in the final segment, I will later be sharing on how you can use a PCT report from Singapore in one of these acceleration programs. So the SGIP Fast Track program is actually a domestic acceleration program, which is a pilot scheme introduced in May last year amid the pandemic to speed up grants of patent applications across technology fields. So it is now possible for companies to actually obtain a grant of Singapore patent in as fast as 6 months from the date of filing. And in order to qualify for this program, the patent application must first be first filed in Singapore, and the search and examination request must also be filed on the same day as the patent application request. And besides this, it should also adhere to other specific time limits for actions. So for businesses seeking to obtain related IP rights for their portfolio, the program actually also includes the acceleration of related trademark and designs applications. So under this expanded initiative, successful applications of trademarks can actually be granted in as fast as 3 months, while the timelines for registered designs applications can be shortened to 1 month. So in the final section, I'd like to illustrate how you could use these networks and programs to accelerate your application in Singapore, as well as to rely on this Singapore report to accelerate your application overseas. So the following examples illustrates how you may rely on our national work products to accelerate your patent application overseas. So in the first example, the patent application, which is first filed in Singapore, may be accelerated via the Singapore IP Fast Track Program for grant of the patent in as fast as 6 months. So upon receiving the report, you may use it to accelerate the patent application overseas via the PPH or SPEC networks. And in the second example, the applicant may rely on a report from a PPH participating office to accelerate the patent application in Singapore. And then the Singapore report can be used in an SPEC participating office to accelerate the patent application overseas. So this slide shows the examples on how you may rely on your PCT work products to accelerate your patent application overseas. So in the first example, SG acts as Singapore actually acts as a competent international searching authority, and we can conduct the international search for the PCT application, which was filed at another PCT receiving office. So the Singapore PCT report may then be used in PPH or SPEC participating offices to accelerate the patent application overseas. In the second example, Singapore acts as both the receiving office as well as the international searching authority for the Patent Cooperation Treaty application. And this Singapore report may then be used in a similar manner in PPH or SPEC participating offices. Yeah, so in summary of my presentation, I would just like to highlight that in the world of business for fast-moving technologies, speed to market will be of great importance as a key business strategy. Yeah. And thank you for taking your time to hear about how you can leverage on IPOS networks and programs to accelerate your IP registration at IPOS and bring your products or services faster to investors in global markets. So I hope this session is useful in helping you to understand the importance of using networks to facilitate in your IP journey. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Lord Julie, for your presentation and your very important message at the end to our audience. In case you have any questions from Ms. Lord Julie about any programs and networks mentioned in the presentation, you can send us the questions in the Q&A tab, and your questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end of the seminar today. For now, we will come to the last presentation of our event today, and we are very pleased to have with us the representative from the business, Mr. MC Lim and Mr. Renier Ong, the co-founders of the Cryptic Technologies, to share with us about their journeys and the importance of IP in commercialization from business perspective. MC Lim is a co-founder of Cryptic Technologies, headquartered in Singapore. His experience is in finance and capital markets. He believes in demystifying and simplifying unnecessary complexity to make life for everyone less daunting and more enjoyable. MC is a graduate from the University of Adelaide in Australia with a Bachelor of Economic degrees majoring in accountancy. Renier and Ong is one of the founder of Creative Technologies. He graduated from the Lasalle University Manila with a Bachelor of Science degrees in Electronic and Communication Engineering and was awarded for outstanding undergraduate research. He was part of the team that built the first ever Philippine solar car that competed in the World Solar Car Challenge in 2007. Renier has been an active member and officer of IEEE, the largest technical organization, for more than a decade. Mr. MC Lim and Mr. Renier Ong, thank you for joining us today, and the floor is yours now.
Right. Well, I'll start with, the world is experiencing an event that there is no textbook to refer to. With this pandemic, we are fortunate to have a digital ecosystem that we could rely on. Whether it's by choice or by need, the world is thankful that we can continue to function and operate. This digital transformation has in turn enabled bad actors to take advantage of the vulnerabilities, leading to cyber attacks, data breaches, and ransomware. Our story today is, whilst new innovations are being developed to address these vulnerabilities, it is paramount to protect our intellectual property at the same time. On that note, thank you, Ms. Yong, for the introduction. Thank you, EU. Thank you, ARISE, and plus IPR and IPOS for having us here. Good afternoon here in Singapore. Good morning and good evening to everyone who is joining in from Europe and various parts of the world. My name is MC, and today with me is Rainier. We are the technologists and innovators of Crypto Technology, a deep tech cybersecurity startup company based in Singapore. Today's topic is a business perspective, insights on commercializing IP in the region. So we would like to share with you, 1, our journey, our beginnings, our vision, and our plan. 2, IPOS as a springboard to the region. 3, importance of IP in commercialization. Moving to our beginnings. It actually all started with a hello when Rainier, Eric, Elvin, and I met. We are the co-founders. You could say that it's a collision of minds from 3 countries, Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines, that formed the catalyst to the discovery of the technology. We were developing a transactional system, one that would benefit the underbanked and unbanked. During this development, we encountered a massive problem. That problem is data security. Our digital ecosystem is a dangerous place and becoming more dangerous every day. But we have no choice but to use it. Our credit cards, biometrics, even your mother's maiden name is floating out there for the taking by hackers and bad actors. So here are some news that you may have come across recently. Colonial Pipeline, SolarWinds, Casillas, and my mother had just received a letter from her eye clinic saying that her personal information may have been compromised as well. So what is this problem? What is the problem? The problem is that keys are exposed today. Like what we do in the physical world with keys, which is to lock and unlock doors, keys are used in the cyber world to lock and unlock your data, albeit in an electronic sense. And similarly, if a robber has the keys to your house, they can gain access into your house. And if a hacker has the encryption keys, they will gain access to your data. So our vision, what is our vision? Our vision is a safe and trustworthy digital ecosystem. So we embark on a journey to see if we could solve this problem. We not only think out of the box, but think with no box. Why? This is so we are not burdened by any legacy systems. We started out on a blank canvas. Our solution is to eliminate the exposure of keys. If the keys are not accessible to the criminals, then it will be practically impossible for bad people to unlock and steal your assets, your data. We achieve this with our now patent-granted end-to-end data security system where keys are always generated never exchanged, and never stored. Therefore, even when hacked, your data remains locked and safe. I know we have some participants in this talk from Europe, so you might be familiar with GDPR. Our technology is a game changer and focus on only one thing, to secure and protect data. One of the key pillars of both GDPR as well as zero trust security model. A quick question for you. Have you ever received a phone call, for example, from a bank, a law enforcement agency, or hospital, where they're asking you for your personal information to verify you? I'm sure you're also thinking at that point in time, but who is on the other side of the line? You can probably sense like most people nodding their heads now. Yes, that is also one of the problems we solve with our technology. With our technology, we are able to verify callers on both sides without exposing the personal information, protecting your privacy, as well as protecting you from falling victim to scam calls. So that's what we have done. So what is the plan? What's the plan to get there? How do we get there? Like all tech startups, we have to go through the process of seeking investments, finding potential partners, develop the technology, finding customers, sell our product, make money, and ultimately seek an exit strategy. I will touch on some of these later. But now let's talk about bringing a vision, a great idea, a great invention to commercialization. It is not as simple as it sounds. Predators. Without IP protection, you are easy meat. Many tech startups get ahead of themselves and they start by trying to bring their invention to the market as quickly as possible. One second. Here we are. As quickly as possible. We all pray, we all hope, and sometimes naively believe that we are working with honest and good people. The world, unfortunately, is a dangerous place, and therefore, if you do not lay claim to your IP, be it a patent, a trademark, or a copyright, trust me, you are likely to find out the hard way. Your ideas, your invention, your innovation are your assets. You have to protect it. So we decided that the first step of our journey was to patent our invention. It would also serve to let us know that we are truly first to this invention. Another advice for you is to choose your professionals wisely. We brought on board a patent attorney who also has a PhD in engineering, as well as a top-notch patent litigator onto our team. And as inventors, you have to remember this. You have to work closely with them, meaning work closely with your patent attorney and patent litigator, because no one knows your invention better than you do. So with that, it is now over to my learned colleague, Rainier, to take you on to IPOS as a springboard to the region.
If you have noticed that there's no credit in this photo, don't worry, there's no copyright infringement, because I took this photograph the last time I was in Singapore, just before the lockdown. Before we talk about IPOS as the springboard to the region, let me share with you our considerations on why Singapore. We chose Singapore to set up our HQ and do our first patent filing for three main considerations. Number one, economic. Number two, geopolitics. And number three, IP protection. On the economic aspect, first, we need to assess who will buy and use our data security technology. And as Mr. David Koh, Chief Executive of Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore puts it, cybersecurity is like the brakes of a car. If you want to drive fast, you need good brakes. We tend to see cybersecurity as a drag, but it is good security that allows us to go faster in the digitalization area and better reap the benefits of digitalization. This makes Asia Pacific, particularly China and Southeast Asia, an enticing region when we look at the growth of digital transformation, partly because digital transformation is a necessity rather than an upgrade. For example, how digital and mobile technologies can provide financial services to the underbanked and unbanked. Now, because of COVID, necessity is also driving digital transformation globally. On top of that, Singapore is ranked second most digitally competitive country only next to US. As a testament, most data centers in the region are hosted in Singapore. Second, on geopolitics. Whilst we see the benefits of digital transformation to humanity and how it can improve our lives, as well as the need of good security to keep our digital ecosystem running, we cannot turn a blind eye on how technology is being at the heart of US-China tensions, now and for years to come, like what was reported in Nikkei Asia. Singapore's ability to stay neutral in a polarized world is appealing to companies. In fact, Singapore is known to be the gateway to ASEAN and the rest of Asia. Singapore is also home to regional hub of most multinational tech companies like Alibaba, Facebook, Google, and Tencent, to name a few. This is also echoed in a recent interview where Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, Singapore's foreign minister, said, there can be a new golden age in the digital arena if the United States and China can build up trust and engage each other. But on the other hand, where trust is depleted, bifurcation of supply chain occurs, which in turn leads to a bifurcation of technology, which must mean a world with slower progress. He also noted that Singapore has made itself relevant to both the US and to China, so that they have stake in Singapore's success, but that there is a difference between being useful and being made use of. On this note, it is also important for us to think deeper on how we can make our technology, our business, relevant and useful to everyone, and not being made use of by someone. Third, very important consideration, IP protection. Like what MC said earlier, without IP protection, you are easy meat. And without a doubt, Singapore and IPOS are well regarded and have been consistently ranked as one of the best in the world. For example, World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Report 2019 ranked Singapore second in the world and top in Asia for having the best IP protection. International Property Rights Index 2020 ranked Singapore's property rights regime as one of the best in the world. This gives us confidence that our intangible assets will be protected. IPOS is also ranked as the most innovative IP office in the world by the World Trademark Review for coming out with innovative solutions to help us protect and commercialize our IP. Like, for example, IPOS Go Up, shared earlier by Mr. Walter Cha, which we use to apply for trademarks conveniently. And as we've heard, more innovations are coming soon. What we wish to share with you on our IPOS experience is, being a startup where resources are limited, our patent attorney who is based overseas advises to do the filing in Singapore on our own to save costs. Doing this patent filing for the first time, there's some worries and areas where we needed some assistance and guidance. There were also times that we were unsure if we're following the guidelines accurately. So in one of the conversations with an IPOS officer, she said, don't worry, MC, we're not policemen out to catch you if you have submitted a section in error. We are here to help you. With that, we can say that the service we have received from IPOS is nothing short of remarkable. On our experience with the examiners, the data security technology that we have invented is an ecosystem of multiple functions in one singular process. Whilst the examiners understood the technology that we have submitted, the specification did not sufficiently display the unity. Since it was our first time to file for a patent, we requested if we can have a face-to-face meeting with the examiners, which we were granted. During the meeting and Q&A, the examiner was able to guide us on the requirements and gave us some suggestions on how we can respond to the written opinion and be compliant. Even our patent attorney said, that is unusual that you have been granted a face-to-face meeting and given guidance. So the IPOS examiners are indeed technically competent and are here to help you comply. If and only if your submission is truly novel and inventive to begin with. One of the factors on why we chose IPOS as our first patent filing is because of the FinTech Fast Track initiative, where patent can be granted in as fast as 6 months' time. We understand that having a FinTech Fast Track initiative is a huge commitment in resources for IPOS to help those like us and maybe even yourselves to get ahead of the curve. For that, we thank IPOS. This is beneficial to us, and at this point, I would like to move on to the next slide, Patenting Global. The comprehensive examination of IPOS, combined with the FinTech Fast Track initiative, enabled us to have our patent granted before we filed for PCT and in different jurisdictions. As IPOS is a well-regarded and respected IP office in the world, our journey in Patenting Global has been a smooth one. And as you've heard from Ms. Truly Law on IPOS network and acceleration programs, we are leveraging it to accelerate our patenting process in the ASEAN region through the aspect. We understand that there are European delegates in this virtual event looking to expand their business and protect their IP in the ASEAN region. I think you will also be pleased to hear that we have also filed our patent in Europe through EPO and hope to expand to a region as well. Now, back to MC to talk about the importance of IP in commercialization.
Right. Following from Rainier and Mr. Walter Chia, I want to add a quip here. If you have a great invention and innovation, and you're not afraid to defend your invention, I will say, come to Singapore, come to IPOS. The reward is a validation that your invention has passed one of the most stringent IP examinations in the world. And also to summarize what Rainier said, our experience with IPOS is one that has been nothing short of amazing. I'm not saying this to promote IPOS, but it is truly our experience. It was connected, it was sincere, and it was genuine. So with that, I think we will go on to the next and final part of our story today, which is on commercializing. Our target market is the region, and we would like to go global after that. Our products are software as a service and licensing. So why is IP so important? As the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. We need to acknowledge that we will need to work with many different people, corporates, governments, organizations, individuals, to bring our technology to life and to deliver what we promise to everyone who would be our customer and also those who are our investors. There's a lot to speak about here, but today we will just share some key points on why you need and at the same time be able to leverage on having IP protection. So we'll go to number one, IP offices. You need to seek IP protection in jurisdictions where you intend to sell or market your products. Remember, technology may be borderless, but IP is not. It is territorial and it's by jurisdiction. Number two, investment and valuation. Your company's value is based on its assets. Investors are investing in your company based on the value of your assets and potential. But if you cannot protect your asset, including your IP, then your asset will lose its value. IP will also be needed to create value for your exit strategy. For example, if you want to go for an IPO, or as in Singapore, Singapore has made the SPAC, Special Purpose Acquisition Company, regulations more simplified to encourage listing in Singapore. Number three, partnerships and agreements. Without a strong IP, you are disadvantaged with any agreements when it comes to collaborations, joint ventures, joint development, and even just putting out a service agreement with your employees. So an example, if you're going into a new market, a new country, you may want to work with a local company that already has a big footprint, a ready market, understands the local environment and regulations. So this cuts both ways, you being at risk and them wanting to work with someone with IP. And in our case, our technology can also be integrated into a chip for purposes of protecting data, example in IoTs. But we are not a chip foundry, which means we would be better off working with the likes of Broadcom or TSMC to leverage on each other's expertise and strengths. They would certainly only want to work with someone whose IP is protected. The next one, branding. Trademarking of logo, brand, and name will allow you to promote and establish your brand that people can distinguish, be it on your packaging, advertising, or online. Imagine this, if you have a great product that everybody likes, everybody loves, but because you didn't protect your branding, someone else comes out with a subpar product with your brand on it. Now that wouldn't be very good. So the above are some areas where a good IP strategy and protection can make a real difference in commercialization. Now, I will end today's presentation with a story. So 174465, USPTO patent number 174465. That is the patent number for the acoustic telegraph, also known as the telephone. It was filed for by Alexander Graham Bell and issued on 7th of March, 1876. He and his cohorts then offered the patent to Western Union for a princely sum of $100,000, roughly US 30 million in today's dollars. Western Union decided not to buy it and regretted it 2 years later. Bell went on to set up American Bell Telephone Company, but to cut a long story short, it became AT&T that we know of today. So Alexander Graham Bell understood the need and value of a patent. At the same time, I would say Western Union then did not have the foresight to see what is future tech. So as the world is changing rapidly towards digitalization, we cannot just settle at making small incremental changes, but instead you need to be bold. If you don't settle, you may just come out with the next groundbreaking innovation that will serve and change the world. Commercialize it, and you will find yourself making money in the process. Right, so now let's go on to the last part. I think I should give you all some takeaways before I end this, our segment. So the takeaways is, 1, creativity and ideas. Don't let it stay as a dream. Translate it into reality. Do it. Solve real problems. The world has many problems. Solve a need and you will have commercial viability. But don't forget to, number 2, protect your IP first. Number 3, if you're looking for action activity, Southeast Asia and Asia is where you should be. And you cannot get a better springboard than Singapore with all the attributes that it brings. Lastly, remember, you cannot do everything by yourself. As the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child, and IPOS is here to help you. So with that, it's a wrap, and we are happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. MC Lim and Renier Ong, for sharing with us about your business journeys and the key takeaway message to the business on the importance and key process of IP registration and enforcement, as well as the very kind and active support from the IP Office of Singapore to the businesses. So, dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we had listened to 3 presentations of the seminar to date, and we had received quite a number of questions, very interesting questions from the audience. In case you still have questions, please send your question to our speakers using the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screens. So now I would like to invite all of our speakers to join us for the dialogue with the business session. Yes, we have received quite a number of questions, so I will read out the questions and address each question to our speakers. The first question that we received, I would like to address this question to Mr. Walter Chia. What are some of the key advice you will give to the businesses that are going digital or that find themselves in this increasingly more digital landscape? I would like to invite Mr. Walter Chia to answer this question.
Thank you. I think one of the first things that you have to be aware of is that what exactly is the digital landscape going to be like. For example, if you are a company selling traditional products and you wish to tap on platforms like Lazada, Shopee, or even Amazon, you have to be very aware of what are the terms and references that you're agreeing to when you use their platforms. Even when you market through YouTube, you have to be aware of what you use, what rights that you do give up and surrender to YouTube when you do so. I think it's not very well known that when you use YouTube to say advertise your product, you are actually surrendering the right to use other platforms to promote the same actual video content. So you have to be aware of these kind of things in all the different rights and schemes that YouTube has as a business. Besides that, I think there's always no harm in seeking advice. Some of the things that you can do is, of course, approach IPOS for some top level advice, but I think in certain cases, approach a branding consultant or even sign up for some of our business clinics so that you can actually find out a little bit more about what exactly you want to do, so that the consultant can actually understand exactly what you have in mind so that they can better advise you on what are the watch outs for in terms of whether you're launching an advertising campaign or whether you are starting to market a product digitally entirely. So these are things that you can, of course, talk to consultants for. It's free, it's 45 minutes. Visit IPOS's webpage to find out a bit more and set up your e-appointment for a business clinic session. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Waterchi, for your advice. I think that after this seminar, there will be more and more registration for the IP clinic at the IP office of Singapore. Yes. So our next questions, I also would like to address these questions also to Mr. Waterchi, if you could help to answer these questions. I would like to ask, do you see a role Singapore can play in the event that technological bifurcations occurs?
I think this is a difficult question. But anyway, I think when technology bifurcation happens, if it happens, it's not just Singapore that plays a role. But I have to say that Singapore, I mean, we sit in a particular part of the global neighborhood, and they were keenly aware of the tensions that have been going on between the US and China in the recent years. And I'm not saying that we have been preparing for this role, but I think as part of our natural function as a gateway to East and West that we have been playing, a role that we've been playing for centuries, we have already put in place certain things that will help us act as a better go-between should such bifurcation happens. For example, in the arena of patents, we are one of the first, in fact, I think we are still the only other IP office besides CNIPA or the Chinese IPA office that accepts patent applications in native Chinese language. In other words, our patent examiners are able to take a Chinese patent application in Chinese language, process it according to our requirements, and then grant the patent based on that. This has a lot of implications. It means that Chinese companies have actually got a foothold into the rest of the world via Singapore if they wish to protect technologies overseas. Conversely, our patent examiners are bilingual. Well, not all of them, but the majority of them are bilingual. But in other words, they are able to read Chinese prior art. So if you're a Western company with an interest in the Chinese market, if you file a patent or application through Singapore, we will be searching against Chinese what we call patent literature to determine whether technology is novel and basically understand what is actually the state of the art in China and the rest of the world before we give you advice on how you can proceed with your patent application. So these are some of the steps that we have taken in order to place us in as a suitable in between should technological bifurcation happens. But I must say that technological bifurcation has not happened, and I think we are hopeful that there are some. We are hopeful that there is that this may not actually happen in the end, because the entire world understands that at the end of the day, if technology bifurcation takes place, everyone loses, especially the consumers. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Waterchi. Next questions, we received 2 questions for Ms. Lo Chiu Lee regarding the ASPECT program. I would like to invite Ms. Lo Chiu Lee to answer these 2 questions. In your presentation, you shared that one way to accelerate patent protection in ASEAN is through the ASPECT programs. How long does it take to receive the first office action for an ASPECT request, and what is the demand like for this program?
Okay, so the ASPECT program actually launched in 2009, and as of 1st January this year, there's about 800 ASPECT requests received to date. And out of these requests, about 83% of the them are actually relying on a search and examination result issued by IPOS. And as for the average pendency to first office action, right, for all AMS, it's actually about 8 months. And if you're keen to find out more about other statistics, they are actually available on the ASEAN Intellectual Property portal. You can visit there for more details. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Lo Chilin. The second question is also related to the ASPECT program. We understand that the ASEAN member states had different national languages. So how does the ASPECT program overcome the language barrier or translation issues?
So the ASPECT program actually operates in English language for all participating ASEAN member state IP officers. So this is actually to help to overcome the applicants to overcome the language barriers in the various countries. Yeah, hope that answers the questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lo Chilin. Yes. The next questions, this question I would like to address to two of our speakers from the cryptic technologies company. For many businesses, IP is not a priority on their agenda. So what is your advice to them? And from your experience, which stage of the business should one start to consider integrating IP in its business strategies? And do you find the process expensive and time consuming overall?
Right. Okay. I think if IP is not a priority on agenda, but you do have intellectual property that you need to protect or you are considering protecting, although IP may not be on the agenda, if you are selling, let's say, for example, a product, you might even have a logo. And that's something that we mentioned earlier, that if you don't trademark this logo, someone else might trademark that and or maybe even not trademark that, but just abuse it by using it. Then they make either a similar product or sub-quality product and pass off as what you have. But if you do have that trademark, then you are protected. Now, if you're talking about at which stage of the business one should consider to integrate the IP into their business strategies, that depends on, for example, let's say if you want to go to Vietnam, Thailand, or Philippines, for example, and that is one of the markets that you are gunning for, then I would say you have to start right from the very beginning and begin the process, because this process is not exactly like an overnight process, like you submit today, you get it tomorrow. So there is a process that goes around it and it takes some time. So my advice for you is to start integrating IP into your business strategies early on. On the next question, do you find the process expensive and time consuming overall? We'll be lying to you if we say that the patenting process, which is what we went through, is not expensive. It is expensive to us. Of course, if there are companies who are very well-to-do and very rich, it might not be very expensive. But to us, it was quite a pricey affair. And but overall, if you ask me, it is reasonable. It is reasonable. Is it time-consuming? Well, put this way, Singapore's FinTech Fast Track program was a great help to us because the amount of time taken was shortened. But at the same time, when you talk about FinTech Fast Track program or any of the fast track programs that Singapore IPOS is initiating, you have to be mindful that you yourself need to be responsive, because there are certain guidelines and there's certain requirements that they require out of you. On their end, they are committing resource to come out with a written opinion faster, but your response to those written opinions will also need to meet their requirements. So yes, for Singapore, we were on the fast track program. However, for other jurisdictions, yes, it can be time consuming. I think this one here, it will be better answered for by a patent attorney or a patent agent who is more familiar with those jurisdictions. But overall, from our experience, it can take anything from like 2 years, 3 years, to even 5 years to get a patent granted. So maybe, I don't know, maybe Rainier has something to add to this.
I think what I want to add, with regards to whether it's being expensive and time consuming, is we also need to look at this on a cost benefit analysis. Like, if you want to save by not patenting your technology, let's say, and after you spend, let's say, 2 years time in developing your platform or your product, and someone would just come and copy what you have created, then you have lost a bigger long-term value. So I think we should also look at it at the cost benefit perspective.
Yes, thank you very much, MC and Renia, for your very added value advice, and also your honest sharing about the cost, as well as about the documentation preparation, which is very important. The next questions, I think, also for cryptic technologies. From a company point of view, unfortunately, we are always tied with financial constraints. Are there any support or tips for us who are interested in protecting in Singapore or in the region? So may I invite MC Lim to answer these questions relating to the financial constraints?
Okay, I think as all startups, right, we are all concerned about how we spend our dollars is not endless. And so we're always looking at how do we be effective with the financial capabilities that we have. So any support or tips for us? IPOS Go. One of the things that we benefited from IPOS Go, which is the app that IPOS has, is that we were able to do the trademarking of our whatever we needed to trademark, and there were numerous, rather seamlessly and effortlessly. So what we paid for was merely the processing fees, and those were not very high. So for those who like the trademark in Singapore, have a good look at IPOS Go, because that app is good. It is good. So if you're looking at the region, then I would say if you have a patent in Singapore, that's a good start, because the quality of the examinations, as well as going down the aspect route, will greatly help and accelerate the process of patenting beyond the Singapore shores to the ASEAN member countries as well. So because at the end of the day, you will still have to pay for all the examination fees at individual jurisdiction. That is not like a one-stop shop where you file your patenting with ASPEC and you expect to get the protection from all these member states. No, you still have to file at individual jurisdictions, and that is costly. Examination fees still needs to be paid. However, the journey, meaning the examination part, then if I'm not wrong, following from what Ms. Julie said earlier, is that there's a reliance on the Singapore examination, and there will not be, I believe, duplication in the process of the examination part, which will save you a lot of money from the legal process or the patent attorneys and the resubmission, or rather the defense of your patent in those jurisdictions. So yeah, there are a few tips that I think we can give you.
Yes, thank you very much, MC Lim, for your advice. We also would like to hear the advice and point of view from the IP Office of Singapore for this question. So may I invite Mr. Waterchair to share with us your view?
Thank you, Ms. Yong. I hope it's not too late for Cryptech, but I would just like to share that there are actually two grants that are run by Enterprise Singapore. There's one of these grants is the Enterprise Development EDG, Enterprise Development. What the G stands for? I'm so sorry. But basically, it is actually Enterprise Development Grant that basically allows companies to get certain offsets for their local IP consultancy services. Then there's another grant called the Market Readiness Program. And this Market Readiness Program actually allows companies who are seeking to expand overseas to defray some or part of their costs in doing so. I understand that the coverage is not 100%, but there are certain caps to it, but at least it will defray some parts of your overseas patenting activity can become under this grant. So these are just some of the programs that we run. Unfortunately, IPOS itself, in order to prevent a conflict of interest, because we give the grants, because we grant the IP, we do not give grants for companies to do so because it will just represent a conflict of interest. So I hope that these two programs can help at least defray some of the cost of expanding overseas with IP.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Waterchair, for the information. Yes. The next questions. I would like to address these questions to both IP Office of Singapore and Cryptic Technologies. Technologies is part of this, but IP protection is territorials. This is very true, which we are made aware of. I would like to ask Cryptic Technologies, Arise and IP Office, how can we better position ourselves or learn what or how to prioritize? Maybe we can hear.
Maybe I'll give it a shot. I will give it a shot. Yes. This is MC here. I'll give it a shot. All right. Technology is borderless, but IP is territorial. I think this is one of those questions that we wanted to ask the WIPO chief, Darren Tang. So how do we, moving into the future, what new innovations will come our way where it becomes a lot more easier to do a certain groups of patents. But I know that there are groups of like the regional patent officers that are available. So how can we better position ourselves? So I think first of all, you need to look at what your company represents. What are you selling? What sort of technology are you putting out to the marketplace? Is it a hardware? Is it something of a software, a process? So, for example, when it comes to software, a lot of jurisdictions do not accept software to be filed as a patent. So you need to be aware of that as well. So how do you prioritize on where to go? So if you start looking at yourself and see what sort of product you have, you may not need to patent the whole world. Of course, if you have a product that is totally global and in every jurisdiction it is a potential infringement, then you would have to patent the whole world. But that will come with a lot of resource, a lot of money. Now, if you say you want to patent the whole world, but you're not going to those countries immediately or within the next 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, then I would say you need to start cutting down your list, because those countries that you patent from around the world, say there are 200 over countries or 200 countries in the world. If you patent the entire planet, then it can become a liability versus an asset to you, because every year you have to pay the renewal fees, which can come out to be a lot. So I think you need to look at your product and prioritize on what are the markets that would you would need to go to within the next 5 to 10 years, I would say, because I think that would be your market, and that's where the value creation is. So you will gun for those markets. But I think if you go way beyond that, I think you need to think quite hard whether you really want to spend those monies on patenting in some of the other countries where enforcement could be very difficult as well. So that's my take on it.
Yes.
To add also on what MC just said about your target market. So let me just quickly share with you our own experience. So like in our case, our product is data security, and our target market would be companies who are in the digital transformation or having an online platform. And as we know it, the digital ecosystem is moving towards cloud infrastructure, cloud platforms. So the way we prioritize is that we are gunning for the countries that are hosting the cloud servers or cloud platforms as our priority market.
Yes. Thank you, MC, and thank you, Renier, for sharing with us in terms of the market prioritization. And I also would like to invite Mr. Waterchir to share with us your view also from the IP office.
Yeah, thank you. I think that MC and Rainer have have really explained some of the very key principles that apply when a company is thinking of its cross-border international patenting strategy. What we at IPOS would like to really advise is to build on MC's point, is that get professional assistance if you can. I know that many companies or many individuals try their best to understand things like novelty, inventive step, and so on and so forth, and which are basically key requirements in the grant of a patent. The problem is that these are very technical fields, and the whole problem is that these definitions differ from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So some IP office may have a different take on inventive step or novelty than say IPOS would. I mean, novelty is actually quite straightforward, but maybe inventive step. Or industrial application for that matter. So these are all the things that you have to be aware of. And I think it's really helpful to get professionals familiar with jurisdictions to assist you in doing so. The other issue that we advise, especially with tech companies, is that there are some jurisdictions that have data ownership rules and laws. So in some countries, you simply cannot store the data from the nationals in a server that's overseas. And this presents all sorts of operational and, of course, IP type of ramifications that you may want to consider. I see MC is grinning here. So yeah, so these are just some of the difficulties. You really need to get an expert to assist you. They may cost a lot of money, but in many cases, it's usually penny wise, pound foolish if you decide to go ahead on your own. Because coming from an IP office experience, mistakes are costlier to fix than if you had gotten it right from the beginning.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Waterchir. Yes. So now we have two more questions from the audience. The next questions also for creative technologies. So far, how many countries you have filed patent protection and how many are granted?
I think that is a little bit of a loaded question for us. Okay, how about this? We have filed for approximately 2/3 of the world's population. So that is how far we have gone. In terms of granted, only Singapore IPOS has been granted. And of course, when it comes to Patent Cooperation Treaty, it has been examined, it has been published as well. So I think that's as much I can probably tell you at this point in time as to how far we have gone. And it's made us quite poor, honestly. That's why we said it. If we say that it is not expensive exercise, then we will be lying.
Thank you, MC Lim, for your answers. So now we will come to our last questions from the audience. Are there situations where companies might want or should not protect our IP? I heard like some keep as like trade secret. May I ask this question to our speakers from the IP office, either addressed to Ms. Julie or to Mr. Waterchir? Yes.
Hi, Julie, you want to have a go at this or shall I go?
I'll just give some of my views. So basically, right, so if you're going to protect your invention in the form of IP, you should also bear in mind that after the term of protection, so for example, for patents, you have a term of 20 years of protection, the invention will eventually be open for public to use. And so therefore, if you're intending to keep and retain the rights to your invention, then you might want to consider that as a trade secret. So for example, like the Coca-Cola, they have been actually protecting their recipe as in the form of trade secrets. Yeah, so, and another consideration is possibly the kind of technology that you are intending to protect. So if your technology is developing relatively fast and changes in a couple of years, then you could probably protect it in the form of IP, since you do not necessarily need to keep it as a secret forever. Since eventually it will not be useful to you in the form of IP. And another thing is for IPs, you might want to also bear in mind that even if you're not using it yourself, you can actually get protection and license it and earn some revenues from this licensing. Yeah, so these are some of the benefits of protecting your IP versus keeping it as a trade secret. Yeah, so if Walter, you may wish to add on, we have more points from your end.
Well, I would urge companies to, thanks Julie. I urge companies to actually consider options to be creative with the way they operate as well. There are some companies that may choose to file for a patent but do not choose to follow through the patent application. This is the whole idea behind what you commonly see as a patent pending application, where this company files so that they can use a local Singaporean lingo to choke the space, basically to reserve the space and the technology to say that it is theirs for that period of time, and then they decide to pull out their patent application after the expiry of like 12 months down the road. This might be useful for technologies that are really, really fast moving, or even like design features, like for example the slide right to unlock versus slide up to unlock, that kind of things. Because that these things are so easily duplicated and easily reverse engineered that you might not want to seek formal IP protection, but actually choose some of the informal methods instead.
Yes, thank you very much, Walter Chi and Mr. Chulis, for your answers to the last questions. On behalf, I also would like to close the Q&A session here, and I would like to thank you all the speakers for your participation and for your answers to all the questions that we received from the audience. We also would like to thank you very much on the audience for your questions and for your active participation in the event to date. So we would like to conclude our event here. In case you still have questions, kindly share with us, and we will address your question to the speakers, and we will send the written answers to your email after the event. Also, the recording of the event to date and the materials that the speakers share during the event today will be shared with you after the event for your further reference. To officially close the seminar today, I would like to invite Mr. Walter Chia from the IP Office of Singapore to have a few words.
Thank you. I think this has been a really interesting sharing session, and just to be quite candid, when I saw Cryptek's slides a week ago, I had to quickly change my slides because I had a deck that basically talked about all of IPOS's products and services, and I thought that it was just unnecessary after what Cryptek has gone through. And we're glad to have been of service, and we hope to continue to be of service to many more other companies. But I must say that what IPOS does cannot be possible without being part of a far larger ecosystem of patent examiners, trademark examiners, patent professionals, even business consultants, branding consultants. These are the local partners. But we also cannot do what we are doing today without the collaboration with other IP offices, UIPO, EPO, the ASEAN IP offices, USPTO. I mean, the list is just endless. But the point I'm trying to make is that in our bid to serve our business better as a global IP hub, we cannot do this without the efforts of our partners And I think in this case, today's program done by Arise Plus is an excellent example of how this partnership actually lends purpose and momentum to what we are trying to do as Singapore IP office for Singapore businesses or Singapore registered businesses. So with that, I thank you, and maybe I'll pass the floor back to Ms. Yong Lei.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Waterchip. On behalf of Arise Plus IPR project management team, we also would like to thank you, IP Office of Singapore, for your kind coordination for this activity. We also thank you for all the speakers for your time and participation in the event today. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you very much for your time and engagement in the event today, and we hope that you have got useful knowledge and information during our last 2-hour event. We would like to kindly ask for a few minutes of your time to fill in the satisfaction survey, which you can find when you close this platform. Your feedback is very important for the improvement in our future events. We thank you once again, and we wish you on health, happiness, and safety. And we hope to see you again in our future events. Thank you and goodbye.